Good afternoon from the KUOW newsroom. This is Seattle Now. I'm Patricia Murphy with today's top stories. It's Wednesday, May 20th. Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson's plan to add 1,000 new shelter units and beds is moving forward. The city council signed off on a measure yesterday that will let tiny home villages and safe lots house upwards of 150 people per site instead of just 100. It will also let at least one site, Camp Second Chance in southwest Seattle, have 250 beds. Council members did make some changes to the measure. Sites with more than 100 beds will be required to have a public safety plan. The Department of Justice is investigating Washington state prisons over its trans inmate policies. Casey Martin reports.
The DOJ says it's investigating if the rights of female prisoners have been violated since they are housed with trans women. In a letter from the Civil Rights Division to the governor of Washington on Tuesday, the department says Washington prisons failed to protect female prisoners from violence and harassment from prisoners who identify as female. Late last month, a prisoner at a women's prison and a nonprofit sued the State Department of Corrections after she says she was attacked by a trans inmate. The DOJ letter doesn't directly mention this ongoing lawsuit. About 300 people incarcerated in Washington prisons say they identify as transgender, according to the Department of Corrections. In March, the Department of Justice announced similar investigations into the prisons in Maine and California. Casey Martin, KUOW News.
The number of traffic fatalities in Washington state is continuing to drop. The Washington Traffic Safety Commission says 659 people died on Washington roads last year, a 10% decrease from 2024. Experts say the decline is due to more traffic enforcement and less risk-taking and impaired driving that peaked during the pandemic. Pedestrian deaths declined as well, but the numbers remain staggeringly high. 148 pedestrians were killed in Washington state in 2025, the third highest total of all time. Local companies are starting to apply for refunds on tariffs they paid, but figuring out how much each company is owed can be complicated. Joshua McNichols has more.
Allison Budvarson runs a small electronics company in Renton. She's built a 400-line spreadsheet to track what refunds she's owed.
I've got tariffs on this spreadsheet anywhere from 3 cents to almost $8,200 for a single item.
But Budvarson didn't pay those tariffs to the government directly. She paid them to shippers like UPS and FedEx, which paid the tariffs at the border. So she's waiting on them to issue her refund. And she's just one step in a much longer supply chain. All up and down that chain, companies are waiting on other companies so they can get their refund. Budvarson also charged her customers for tariffs, and they're waiting on their refunds too. Joshua McNichols, KUOW News.
You can hear more on how companies are navigating tariff refunds on the latest episode of KUOW's economy podcast, Booming. Washington's U.S. senators are introducing a resolution to block a federal artificial intelligence pilot program for seniors. The program, known as WISER, uses AI to review Medicare approvals in Washington and 5 other states. Senators Maria Cantwell and Patty Murray say in some cases the program is overriding doctors' recommendations and delaying needed medical care. The Washington State Hospital Association has found authorization wait times for some procedures have risen from roughly 2 weeks to up to 2 months under WISER. After a recent U.S. Supreme Court ruling on gerrymandering, justices might set their sights on Washington state. A redistricting case out of central Washington is getting renewed attention. State government reporter Sarah Mises-Tan has more.
The state's legislative maps were redrawn in the Yakima Valley to consolidate the Latino vote 2 years ago. Now, a Supreme Court decision on redistricting in Louisiana has reopened local debate on the topic. Opponents of Washington's maps are petitioning the Supreme Court to weigh in. A federal judge declined to take up their case last week. Washington's Secretary of State said redrawing current maps would be a recipe for chaos ahead of this year's primary elections. If the Supreme Court does decide to hear this case, some experts say it's unlikely to interfere with August elections. In Olympia, I'm Sarah Mises-Tan.
And finally today, more bad news for moviegoers. The Boeing IMAX Theater at Seattle Center won't screen feature films anymore. The Seattle Times reports the theater will continue to show short documentaries. The theater was sold earlier this year by the Pacific Science Center to the owners of the Space Needle. The smaller PACCAR IMAX Theater, which is still owned by PacSci, will continue to show feature films. But we'll leave you with some good movie news today. Attendance for the Seattle International Film Festival was up this year, according to the Seattle Times. That's despite having fewer theaters and fewer films to show. SIFF has struggled financially in recent years and laid off staff members in January. Next time on Seattle Now, Seattle has become an attractive place for people fleeing anti-LGBTQ and anti-trans legislation in other states.
Probably one of the greatest draws for folks who move to Seattle from other parts of the country is the fact that we have state-level policies and protections that other states don't.
But now the organizations helping folks move here are asking for the city to declare a civil emergency. Hear more about that Thursday morning. That's all for today from the KUOW Newsroom in Seattle. Our producer is Andy Hurst, and I'm Patricia Murphy. Seattle Now and KUOW are members of the NPR network. See ya.